Holy Gospel is written in the 9th chapter of St. Matthew, beginning at the 9th verse. As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. And as Jesus reclined at a table in his house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to the disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. Desire mercy and not sacrifice. For I came to call not the righteous, but sinners." Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. I don't know if you notice now, at least in the big boats, I don't know if in the small ones, but there's a place for sermon notes. That's a suggestion. You get a lot more out of the sermon if you took notes. Just wanted to let you know that it was there in case you missed it. I don't know how many of you were, but the liturgical church year is broken up into two different sections, really. The first has all the festival Sundays in it, and it concentrates on God's presentation to us, both as Creator, as Sanctifier, and as one present with us. The second part has more to do with how we are to live this Christian life. So the first half of the church year, we have Advent, Christmas, Epiphany, we have Lent, we have Easter, we have the Ascension, we have Pentecost, we have the celebration of Trinity. And the Sundays after Trinity Sunday are called now the Sundays after Pentecost. It used to be the Sundays after Trinity, or the Sundays in the common experience, depending upon your liturgical text you have. So today we start out in a series of number of sermons where the concentration is, what can you do as a part of your commitment to Jesus? Now it's your time to get the focus. And we start today with the calling of one of Jesus' apostles. It happens to be Matthew. The first thing that Jesus had to do was to get together a group of people, and he chose the number 12 to be with him and be with him the whole time of his ministry. So they got the pitch of what he was trying to do, trying to communicate, and then they would be the church after he left. And so we'll use a modern term to describe what he was doing. He was doing team building. And if you're practically in anything, any organization today, they talk about team building. It's done in education. It's done in business. It's done in practically everything that you belong to. Team building, getting together so we work together. And this is certainly something that we ought to be aware of in the church. It's effective. It's very important that we effectively work with each other and do it genuinely and in the spirit God meant it. But today we're going to concentrate on one person, the call of Matthew the publican. Matthew the publican had probably more to lose than the other disciples. If things didn't work out for the fishermen, they could go back to their fishing nets. But Matthew was a tax collector. He worked for the Roman government. And believe me, if he had wanted, after he left that employment, it would have been very unlikely that he would be able to get the job back. So he was risking his whole career. But the focus on this text is, why would he choose Matthew? As a matter of fact, have you ever looked and examined the people that Jesus called to be his apostles? It probably isn't the kind of group that you would like to team build with. Now, think for a moment. If you were to build a team of very close working people, who would you choose in this community? Who would you choose in this church? Who would you want to be with you, that you could communicate effectively with, that you could work together with, that you know you could accomplish a lot? I bet if I took a census of everybody here, they would all have a different list. And maybe the list you dreamed up for yourself wouldn't fit with somebody else's idea of what kind of a group you should have. As a matter of fact, that happens all the time. The Pharisees really didn't think much of Jesus' selection, but he made other bad choices too. Why would Jesus have 4 fishermen? Unschooled, rough, just not having a lot of talent other than to be able to fish? And what about the zealots? Those people that were so hot on getting Rome out of there, were always trying to find ways to upset the Roman people and the Roman soldiers. And if there was to be some suspicion that Jesus was planning some kind of an uprising, the fact that he had 2 zealots there that just hated the Romans might be a good reason for them to suspect that he was doing exactly that. He was planning an uprising. And what about Peter? You like really Peter when you read about him? He was boastful, he was arrogant. He was always saying how much he would do and how he would be so faithful, but he failed all the time. And then he was told that he would deny Jesus, and he said, "No, your life can't happen," and then immediately he does it. What kind of a guy is Peter? And Jesus says, "This is the man I'm going to build my church on." That's what Matthew says about him. And what about John? Arrogant apostle. He constantly refers to himself in his gospel as the one that Jesus loved. Can you imagine that? How arrogant is that? He like make it better than the rest of them. Now, he doesn't have that encounter with Jesus and Peter where Jesus says to him, "On this rock I'm going to build my church." What he has is the last paragraph in his gospel. Instead of the ascension into heaven, he has Jesus talking to Peter and telling him he's going to die before he comes back. And then Peter points at John and says, "What about that guy?" And John says, "Well, the person that Jesus loved." Well, he said, "It's none of your business. You just keep your own mind and your own stuff, Peter. I'll deal with him all by myself." You see, you can go back through all the rest of them. But what about Matthew? Matthew was the most hated occupation in Israel. He was a Jew, but he worked for the Roman government, and he collected taxes. That alone is enough not to like him. But one of the things that the tax collectors had a reputation for was just charging exorbitant rates for this, because the Romans didn't dictate what the tax collector charged. As long as they got what they thought they should have, the rest of it was up to the tax collector to decide what he wanted for himself. And the group was well known for extortion. They just charged too much. Now, maybe Matthew didn't fit that profile, but he certainly wasn't liked by the religious elite. And they could easily see that Jesus was some kind of phone if he was hanging around people like this.
But the unique thing about Jesus was that he had the ability to see beyond the outer skin. You see, every one of us has strengths and every one of us has weaknesses. And that was true of all the apostles too. And some of those weaknesses are used as a strength. But Jesus looked at Matthew. Maybe Matthew had seen him pass by before. But this time, Jesus stops, looks at him, and says, "Follow me." And lo and behold, Matthew gets up and follows without question. Leaves all the tax tables, leaves the booth open, goes and spends his time with Jesus. What are the characteristics of Matthew that might have been worthwhile? We can only guess. But first of all, he's more educated than most of them. He could write. And he wrote very well. Isn't that nice to have somebody along who was taking notes? And Matthew captures a lot of things that none of the other gospel writers catch. He had a pack of friends. The gospel text says that when Matthew had to meet with Jesus in his house, he had all the other tax collectors. That even angered the Jews more than anything else. He had a whole household. But he was influential. He could communicate with people. And when he told the people to meet with him in his house, he did. They did. He also had a very keen understanding of Jewish history. And as you read through the Gospel of Matthew that was written primarily for Jewish believers, he connects all these things from the Old Testament to his gospel and the message of Jesus and the person of Jesus. Much better than any of the other apostles do. See, Jesus can see things in people that others can't. All the people who looked at this group said, they can't be apostles. And Jesus says, that's not what I want. So, one of the other things is that we understand that some of these things that Matthew wrote about, nobody else could have brought to us. The one incident where Jesus thinks about divorcing Mary, the visit of the Magi, the escape to Egypt, the slaughter of the innocents, the suicide of Judas Iscariot, that dream of Pilate's wife during the trial of Jesus, where she says, Pilate, don't deal with this guy. The bribing of the Roman guards to have them say that Jesus was stolen away in the night, rather than let them think about a resurrection. And the baptism emphasis in the Great Commission. They're all something that Matthew was able to capture that none of the others did. And maybe it was that Jesus just knew this and knew that it was beneficial for us to have Matthew's gospel. He simply said, come follow me. And he did. So there's a lesson here. Jesus can see what he can use with people. And I don't know what you came to this church to be part of it, but you were called here for some reason. Even if you were born in this congregation, Jesus has a purpose for you to be here. Sometimes the other members might not think that you have any purpose here, but you do. Because otherwise Jesus won't have you here. He can make things out of you that no one else can. And maybe he's calling you to something that you don't want to do, or something that you think you're not qualified to do. I used an illustration for service in terms of my own experience. When I went to college, and I was a freshman, in order to take private lessons on organ or piano, you had to meet with the head of the music department. and to see you qualify and to see if you could even start taking elementary lessons with them. And I met with the director of the choir and the head of the music department. His name is Olaf Christensen, well known all over the world. St. Olaf Choir is one of the best a cappella choirs, still is in the world. And so I met with this guy, and he had a conversation with me. Hardly spent any time hitting the keys, but he talked with me for a long time. And after about a half an hour, he looked at me and he said, "I'd like you to join the choir." I said, "What?" He said, "I'd like you to join the choir." And I said, "You mean audition for the choir?" "No, you don't have to audition. I'm the one that calls the shots." And I said, "I can't sing." And he said, "Doesn't matter. And you can sing because you spend some time with me, you'll be able to sing. I don't make everybody sing." "I don't think so. I don't think you can teach me." He said, "Okay, well now you're the professor and I'm the student. Huh? You're telling me what I can't do." And I said, "Well, what do you want me for?" He said, "Well, I know your two uncles were in the choir, and your two cousins were in the choir. Why shouldn't you be?" And I said, "Well, I don't think that's any qualification. And maybe I don't have much of a well, I want you for your personality." And my personality, you don't know my personality either. Probably isn't so good. He said, "Well, it's getting a little on my nerves right now." But I'll wait. And he said, "You know, it's much easier for me to work with people that say they don't have any talent rather than those who are the soloists in the high school choir and think they automatically deserve first place here. They think they know it all. It's hard for me to teach it. I love people like you that don't know anything. I don't work with that." Well, I said, "One question, I heard that if you joined the choir, you could be in any extracurricular activities." He said, "That's true. But I like drama." He said, "Well, you have to give it up." "I don't want to give it up." "Well, you see, that's one of the treasures of the choir. You have to be committed. You have to be committed." And I said, "Well, how should I proceed?" And he said, "Just trust me." Well, I wound up in the drama department. But this is so much like the way Jesus works. He comes to us and he calls us and he says, "I want you to be part of something that you probably don't want to be a part of, or that you don't want to do for the kingdom. But he sees some talent in you for whatever it is, whatever parts you play in the church." There's another example I was going to use in regards to this. One of the people who was talking on our Sirius radio station was talking about his dance career. He's one of the great dancers of Broadway. And he said when he was trying out, or when he was starting out, he had to audition before one of the great dance teachers. And he said, "I was nervous as could be. I didn't know that I had a chance to make it. But I said, I'm going to practice. I'm going to show him I know what to do." And I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but there's a dance thing that's called pirouette, something like that. And you can do it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. He said, "I want you to do it twice." He spun around, he did it 3 times. And I nailed it. He said, "I was so glad." And I came to him and I said, "How did I do?" He said, "Well, not so well, but you're on probation now." "What did I do wrong?" He said. "Well, he said, first of all, the most important thing in this dance troupe is you listen to instructions. I asked you to do 2, you did 3. Obviously, you didn't respect me or didn't respect the directions I was giving you. And that can't be. So when you learn to take instructions, come on back. It's kind of the way Jesus does it. You know, I want you to do this. And when you have a better idea, he calls you back. For those of you who've been a member of this congregation a long time, remember a young girl we had, well, she wasn't exactly young, she'd been around 33, I think, and found her out in the parking lot looking at the church, and got to talking with her, and she'd just given her life to Christ. Her life was a mess. Been involved in prostitution, all the drugs, everything that could possibly be bad. And she said, I got this call. And I am an addict. And my response was to think, man, how's God going to use this? And then she said, what I would like to do is just confess this before a congregation, and the congregation I'm going to won't let me. They say a woman shouldn't confess anything bad before a congregation. Remember, she spoke. Very moving experience. And she gave everything that she had. This person who didn't look like she had a chance. Gave up the addictions, gave up the prostitution, gave up everything. Still working as a missionary in the Church of Christ. So, when Jesus calls you to do something, or something in the church invites you to be a part of the kingdom in a different way, think about it. Maybe you don't think you've got the talent. Maybe you don't think you've got the ability. But if you place it in the hands of Jesus, it's amazing what he can do with you. It's amazing what he can do with me. And it is him. And it's total trust. And it's putting everything else aside. And saying, when he says, follow me, you say, I'm there. Amen. There is a wildness in God's mercy. Stand as you are able.